Peace and welcome to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Folks, we got some great conversations ready for you. Let's talk about the latest development in the Brooklyn subway shooting. Now that Mr. Frank James has been apprehended, we'll share with you some of the big details about the charges that he is facing as he looks to that mass shooting. Also, let's talk about what is going on with Elon Musk wanting to purchase Twitter. It sounds so good on paper, but what's the implication for it in terms of public platform, private ownership? We'll have that discussion. And then we'll check in with the CEO and founder of the Listen First Project, Mr. Pierce Godwin. Mr. Godwin is going to talk to us about how we need to discuss the issue of toxic polarization in the country as it relates to politics and other social issues. We'll have that conversation. And Texas is looking to be progressive as they're looking for changing the work week of teachers. Because of the teacher shortage due to COVID and other issues, Texas is saying we need to cut down to a 4-day work schedule. What do you think? So we're going to have that discussion and a whole lot more. So stay with us. It's The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. I'm ready to go. Are you? Let's go. Folks, welcome to the show. Welcome. We got a lot of big conversations, a lot of good things to talk about, and some things that make you say, But this first discussion is around the latest in regards to Mr. Frank James. This is the alleged suspect and the shooter in the Brooklyn subway shooting. Of course, yesterday we shared with you that he's been apprehended. Today, it was known that Mr. James is being held without bail during his first court appearance in federal court. He is now being charged with an act of terrorism. Let me just break this down, folks. He's going to be charged with an act of terrorism, according to the prosecution of terrorist or other violent acts against a mass transit system. So this is now being seen as a domestic terrorism case. This charge, which is a criminal complaint that was unsealed today in federal court in Brooklyn, is going to place Mr. James in this situation. Now, the other thing that we've learned over the past 24 hours is that Mr. James had called the tip line himself to tell law enforcement officials that where he was. He had said that, look, I'm at the McDonald's. And he basically told on himself, folks. So the question about whether he is mentally stable is a looming question over this whole case and this whole investigation. But it has been made known that Mr. James called on himself. And so it brings up this part of the conversation in a very different way. We've been seeing some footage of Mr. James, and has been released some of the latest footage of what happened on that day just 2 days ago on Tuesday morning. And I want you to check this out. Just the chaos that ensued. But prior to that, moments before this chaos, Keenan, let's show them the footage of Mr. James getting into the subway station. Take a look at this, folks. He is just casually trying to get into a subway station. This is such an eerie situation. This man just walked past them. I mean, no one is thinking anything. Just a normal Tuesday morning commute. And, for me, watching this video is very, very eerie. He's just as calm. He's just as collected. He's looked like he's trying to, make his way through the gates there. And to see this, knowing that in a matter of moments, he is going to upend the lives of at least 30 people, is absolutely shocking. And one of the prosecutors, it was said that this was a premeditated, carefully planned attack. And you can just see by his demeanor, even though he has been full of rage, even though he has expressed his grievances about everything from climate change to the conflict in Ukraine to Mayor Eric Adams, little did folks know that this man was going to create such chaos and confusion. Absolutely eerie. Absolutely eerie. We're joined by our culture crew member Rashad Staton, that's going to give us his take on this situation. But there are more and more details that are coming out, and folks, we're going to keep you posted, of course. But Rashad, thank you, brother, for taking time out. It's always good to talk to you on Thursday afternoon.
Peace and blessings, brother. Always, man. Unfortunate situation here. Saddened to see it happen. And what touched me even more personally in my proximity, I had just left New York City.
I was just about to talk to you about that, because we saw each other a couple of nights ago, and you were like, Faraji, bro, I just left New York. You just came from the King's Pleasure, Basquiat, exhibition that's happening up there.
Yeah, man.
And what was that, Monday night that we saw each other?
It was Monday night upon our arrival back, and it was not the space in New York was a normal day. People moving, you know how New Yorkers move freely, open on a quick pace because everyone has somewhere to go. No eeriness in the clouds or the spirits around people, but just to wake up and to see that this happened hits close at home, because what had happened if we would have caught public transportation or got on the train versus the bus or decided to stay a day afterwards. It's like you never can really pinpoint how your day is going to go and how other people is going to actually, play a part in your livelihood. In the way that this man has taken the action, a premeditated action, to be a domestic terrorist is unsettling at heart, right? And it's one of those parts of, man, we got so much going on in life that even when someone processes things and they're unpleased with things that are happening, as he spoke before, to the homelessness, to other things, that hate groups that he was in favor of, it's like, when do we be mindful enough to not always take things into our own hands and cause innocent people to be harmed, killed, or affected?
Yeah, brother. I mean, it has to be. And like I say, just watching the video of him just going through the motions, like, no one is really paying attention to him. I mean, he's talking to, I guess, one of the transit workers about getting through. And I mean, when you look at the bags, Keenan, I just want to show that video one more time, please, Keenan, because you look at the bags. When you look at the bags that he's trying to, I mean, he has like a suitcase, and then he has this other bag, and there were a number of pieces of evidence that were left on the scene, which led him. I mean, I think he really, Rashad, I think he wanted people to know, the law enforcement to know, that he was responsible for this, because the evidence was there. But then you have to wonder, like, what's in the bag? He has this construction gear on, I mean.
Yeah. So it's like he looked like he's not working, but he's traveling to and from work.
Right.
But then when you hear about what the investigation tells us, is that all of this was premeditated, pre-planned, a week or so ahead, that he's been traveling from state to state and things of that sort. And he left these, I believe, probably more so intentionally if he called himself in. Right. So it speaks to a unsettling mind. And I don't want to put this on him, but that's a sick mind of an individual that didn't do the right thing and try to take things upon himself that caused harm and everything else. As you look at this video, these people are walking casually as a normal day by day.
I mean, you wouldn't think that. That's the part about it, Rashad. Like, if you were to see him in a subway station in any of your, anyone's hometown, you would not think this guy is about to commit chaos and confusion. You just would not think that. You would think, like you said, he's coming from work, or he's about to go to work. And like moments later, Kenan, show us the other video, please, brother. Moments later, when people are coming off this train, like, look, they allow him to come in, but moments later, this happens. So he's carrying, all types of artillery to create the smoke effect. I mean, it's sad. And the sad part about it, and I know everybody, we really gotta just say what it is. The sad part about it is that it's a black man.
Mm-hmm.
That's the sad part about it. And it's an older black man.
Right, which is not the calm, right? We know of
which don't fit, which normally does not fit the just doesn't fit the just the whole profile of what we would normally expect or normally see.
Right.
It just doesn't fit the profile. I mean, he's walking with a limp. He just doesn't fit. And I think for a lot of us at this point, it's still like mind-boggling. I remember if you remember the DC sniper.
Yeah. Yep. I remember that vividly.
And you remember when people were saying, well, this has to be a white man or this, and you found out it was a black man with his, it wasn't his son. John Malveaux was not his son. It was his partner. But I remember when people found out that this was a black man, there was just like this whole calm within the black community. You could feel it. It was just like, oh my God.
Yeah. And I feel the same way about
like he didn't fit the profile. So that's the way that I feel like for this situation, it's like, what the heck? This man is,
certainly. I looked at that, and once I saw his name, I was waiting to see images or headshots of him, to see what race or ethnicity he was. And once we saw that, it was like, come on now, it's another loss for the culture. And what place this often fits us? It's not the norm that we would see from the character of those from a black and brown community, but also it's one of those ones like, man, there's so much going on that we're fighting for across the diaspora that we don't need to be categorized in this space of acting of domestic terrorism. And it's a one that is, hopefully, I know it's alleged and they got further investigations,
right?
And just leading forward, man, I'm curious to know his reasons to why, right? And what tipped him off at this tipping point, because maybe it gives us another further stance in what we may need to assess and evaluate as a community, as a culture, but also as a country. Right, to do this in one of the most populous cities in the country and on the largest, I want to say, public transportation systems in the country, he intentionally set out or allegedly went out to harm people. And he has done that with the same people that he did not have a particular issue with. So these are innocent lives impacted from somebody that's not making the most healthy decision. And it's happening on a normal day in probably the most populated time when people are coming from work and coming from schools.
I mean, no, it was
that you now have a diverse.
This happened like 8:30 Tuesday morning, so people are traveling to school.
Right.
Or they most of the time they were going to Manhattan. The N train northbound heads. They were in Brooklyn, Sunset Park, 36th Street. So they were heading to Manhattan. So these are people that are on their way to work. Most of them, right? This was a commuter situation, and that's what makes it even more like he took the time to understand the ebb and flow of all of that. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of people, bro. So it's a lot of people.
And these are militarized weapons and artillery that he's using. In the space of that, I'm curious to what his possible military or service background may have been, or how he even retrieved these levels of artillery, because I don't think most of that should even be accessible to, an everyday citizen. Not to say that we shouldn't be able to protect our rights and things of that sort, but when you have incidents like this, smoke grenades and things that cause even harm, when law enforcement is able to intervene, how can you best identify the suspect versus those that are unintentional citizens that are experiencing this unfortunate incident. It puts more people at harm, and like smoke bombs and things of that sort. We already in a space where our breath is being taken away by COVID and law enforcement, that when somebody else adds something else into this equation, man, you can't get the best possible outcomes. And
No,
I
it's
just
not.
pray and hope that everyone here can be healed. Those that it may have lost them lives or harmed or injured can resolve from this situation, man. This is a situation that I'm looking at carefully and just wanted to know the reason why.
And you know what? And I think that's the other part about this, Rashad, is the why he decided. I mean, well, part of it was revealed yesterday, and we talked about this. 450 videos on YouTube can be found from Mr. Frank James about his grievances and how disgruntled, how just dissatisfied he is around a number of issues, right? But the other part of this is, of course, with the president speaking out on the issue of ghost guns, and then just with the larger discussions around not just access to guns, but just in violence, like how now over these past couple of years since the pandemic started, the country has become much more violent, especially in a lot of these urban centers, big cities like New York City. And so what I foresee happening is that Frank James is going to be the poster child of terrorism, right? And by him being a poster child for terrorism, it's going to put Black men in a very precarious position if there isn't some opposing force to that narrative.
Agree. I can see that.
I mean, I just, and I'm starting to see little remnants of that on my social media timeline, where people are like, "Oh, it's a Black man. They about to, it's gonna." And I'm not saying that it has to go into that space, but if we see President Biden or any national political official speak about this situation and then talk about the thinking of Frank James, because something has to be off, right? Like, I think something has to. Is his story going to be the story of one of being a monster, or is his story going to be, the narrative of his story going to be one who needs mental health help?
Right.
Because because we know that traditionally, if for white males, it's one that they need mental health help, right? Oh, they were abused. Oh, they were suffering. So therefore, not to say that what they did was right, but it's that type of reasoning and justification. And it's going to be interesting. And I think for us as the community, we have to be very clear to say what is wrong is wrong. What Frank James did was absolutely wrong. So we can't be apologists for bad behavior.
Right.
And I know that's a fine line, because nobody, I mean, it's a Black man, you're older Black man, but we can't be apologists for bad behavior. Like, what you did was wrong. You need, I'm all for mental health, but you shot at 30 people. That could have been, and not regardless of the race of the persons that you shot at, that's wrong. You need help. Yeah, but your ass need to be in prison too.
Agreed. Yeah, I don't think the culture or the community comes to his defense. I think the consequences lie where his actions lie. And that's the unfortunate circumstance. But I think, like you said, there needs to be another assessment of his mental health and things that he was navigating personally. Just knowing that the videos there that speaks of the things that he was disgruntled with, speaks that he was it's an array of different things from different spectrums of his own life experience. And he talks about this post-traumatic stress that he experienced. And where was his mental health prior to it? Where was the proactive assessments and supports prior to him inflicting these this unfortunate incident that has impacted us all, that will probably have unintended consequences, as you know, elected officials in New York and elsewhere are trying to discuss the reestablishment of frisk and search, right? When we're walking down in the communities, and he becomes the poster child to Black folks. That just puts all of us at a way where we have to then be very mindful of how we are being perceived by law enforcement, but our freedom to just be ourselves and to walk the streets and to be in public spaces. I think as this story rolls out, we will see, but I hope that he is not one that will be fit to construct the narrative of all of us, but he'll be one that is seen within a singular incident that needs to be addressed by one individual.
Yeah, and again, folks, I just want to remind you, this is the allegation. It is alleged that Frank James is the suspect in this case, but he has not yet confessed. We're not saying that he is the guy. He hasn't confessed and he hasn't been convicted yet. It's alleged. Remember, he started out as a person of interest. Then after more evidence started to be revealed and discovered, he became a suspect. So we're still at the allegations part, Rashad. Just want to let people know. But we know that in the court of public opinion, things can go from 0 to 100 real quick. Let me share what folks are saying in our chat. Tony said, we cannot allow the actions of one to define Blacks as a nation. If that's the case, the Black on Black crimes has already done Blacks in. It was one person. Yeah, I agree. Tony, I agree with you wholeheartedly, sir. I agree. We can't. But so often it does. I mean, we can point out the number of mass shootings and domestic terrorism cases in this country where the person that perpetuated the act of terrorism was in some cases seen as an individual, but in other cases they were seen as part of a group. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it depends on where we are, where the culture is. But I think that's an excellent point, Tony. TB said the situation is sickening. I can't believe that a brother did such a thing. It's absolutely ridiculous how he harmed innocent people who have nothing to do with the cause. And the other part about it, and I'm with you there, TB, because I'm in the same thinking. Why are you shooting up the people that are struggling with you?
Mm-hmm.
Why would you take that step? And I'm not saying that I'm not calling for violence on any, official or anything like that, but we're all in the same boat. So I'm not sure what the purpose was. And like you said, Rashad, we will have to see, but I'm just not sure. Like when you see these level of these acts of violence, I'm always like, but why are you trying to harm the people who are literally in the same boat as you? You got a problem with the policy, right? You got a problem with an official, elected official. You got a problem with the powers that be. And then you want to harm the people that are in the same position that you in.
Yeah. This brings us back to a conversation that we had, Faraj. It's that space of knowing how to be civically engaged in a manner that you can see, impactful change or change in real time. It's right in the space allegedly of how he took it upon himself to be premeditated and everything being pre-planned, from traveling to the northeastern states to where Wisconsin to Philly and then to New York. It's like, man, if you understand that level of transportation and mobility, how could you have reverted your energy to mobilize other people that have the same experience as you to get in front of these elected officials or those that are experiencing things that you can push towards some type of political, systemic, or institutional change, rather than taking the lives or harming the lives of individuals that has nothing to do with anything, but may more than likely share the same sentiments of you.
Yeah. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And see, the other part about this, as we close out this part of the conversation, Rashad, I hope that people understand that this is not the way to get your point across. And here's the thing. I think the other part of it is that when you see a person going to this extreme or this length to get their voice or to get their point across to a people, I mean, that's when you know that the imbalance is there in the brain, in the mind.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you know, because acts of violence, if you're committing this level of violence against people, that means you are far from reasoning. You are far from making sound decisions, right? And if Mr. James is the suspect, if he's the one behind this, then it just goes to show this is an opportunity for us to have a conversation about the culture in this country, of how we might be at a point in this country where we're grooming our own domestic terrorists.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's a scary thought for some people. But every time I think of these mass shootings and these type of incidents happening, I'm wondering, that's not something they didn't get this propaganda from across the waters, or they got it from feeding on the propaganda and feeding on the stories and feeding on the stuff that is happening right here at home.
Right.
So yeah, it's a sad situation, but we will see if Mr. James, who is, again, he is the alleged suspect in the Brooklyn subway shooting, and it shows that, and they find that he is actually the guy behind the shooting. It's going to be interesting to see how this whole thing unfolds, from everything from his motivation to sentencing. Everything is going to be very, very interesting. Rashad, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, let's talk a little bit about what's going on with Elon Musk, the automaker mogul, has decided that he wants to move forward on purchasing Twitter. My thing is this good for the idea of us having a public platform under private ownership? That's the big thing. So we're going to have that conversation with Rashad. Then at the 4:00 hour, we're going to be checking in with Mr. Pierce Godwin, who is the CEO and founder of the Listen First Project, the project that is whose mission is to try to stop toxic polarization in this country. So we'll have those two conversations up next. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
It's time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Rolling all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Rolling was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared. You dig?
Folks, welcome back to the show. We want to switch gears from the Brooklyn subway shooting now to talking about what everyone is talking about, especially on Twitter, which is Mr. Elon Musk. Folks, have you been keeping up on this situation? Yes. Elon Musk, and this is, of course, the founder of Tesla, who has made a gobs amount of money. That's not even a... I want to bring Rashad in, who is our activist and educator, member of the Culture Crew. But Elon Musk has decided that, one, he wanted to purchase some stock. Now it's been reported that it was just resigned, that according to the SEC filings of today, he is moving forward to purchase Twitter. Whereas just a couple of days ago, he just bought a significant amount of stock, which allowed him to have a seat at the table as being the owner of the majority owner of Twitter. Now he wants to purchase Twitter. At least that's what he's saying on paper. Twitter has a valuation. I've been seeing a number of different numbers, Rashad, but it says that Twitter has a valuation of between $41 billion to $43 billion. And Mr. Elon Musk is saying that he wants to purchase it. Now, here's the thing, folks. Here's the thing about this conversation, which I think is very interesting. Here's what Elon Musk had to say about why he decided to invest in Twitter in the first place. Check this out. He said, quote, "I invested in Twitter as I believe in its potential to be the platform for free speech around the globe. And I believe free speech is a societal imperative for a functioning democracy. However, since making my investment, I now realize the company would neither thrive nor serve the societal imperative in its current form. Twitter needs to be transformed as a private company." So Rashad, you're gonna have to break this thing down to me like I'm a fourth grader, bro. If you have a problem with free speech being limited, then how does purchasing a public platform or a platform that's used for the public, putting it under private ownership, ensuring free speech?
Yeah, that's the irony that doesn't sit with me, right? It's like it's at a level of common sense here. It's like, all right, how can you privatize free speech? Does that work? But then it's in a
that's what I'm saying. Isn't that what's the term they use, Rashad? When you know, that's like you said irony, and I think that's the word. But isn't that like I just don't get it? Like, how do you privatize? That's a great way you put it. How do you privatize free speech?
Yeah.
How does that happen? How do you, as a business person, say I'm going to make sure that the people have a say, and you are the owner, the majority owner, or you are the only person at the top? It's a weird. we're dynamic. Like, I just don't understand. I think I understand his thinking, but I don't understand his rationale. Folks, y'all can comment and share. I mean, does that make sense to anybody? I'm sorry, Rashad. Go ahead, bro.
One thing about it is, we can't question this man's level of genius and innovation. One that renders profit like we never seen before, that he has become one of this tech giants in the world, right? After the industrial, now we're in tech industry, right? And he has surpassed everyone that we have seen to become one of the richest people on the earth. But it's at a certain point of, when do we start to scrutinize and have a level of discourse for the 1%, in which he's now moved into, and probably one of the most wealthiest ones that we publicly know, that we see. He uses these platforms to state his claim and what his next investments are, but he's also perpetuating the prices in the stocks and how we do our exchange through these stock exchange, by telling, his followers and constituents of what he's further looking to and invest in, how he will use his level of influence. I think one is not to lose sight that it's a monetary game, and his whole game is to continue to be wealthy in a sense. But his level of space exploration, to now the Tesla, and now the privatization of like Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, and now to go into Twitter, this man has now possibly angled the entire world that we now live in. Which is unsettling to me, is that now this man will probably more than likely control our livelihood and the information that we will retain, and how we would use to voice ourselves. We see the council culture and censorship at its highest, while we're still dealing with these unfortunate incidents like we just spoke of domestic terrorism, upheavals, and unpleasantry of civil rights movements, human rights issues. But now we have to look at the idealization of a one singular person who has the largest shares to one of the most used public platforms across the world, that wants to monetize it, privatize it. And we, at the end of the day, are still not fully secure in what his intentionalities are. And that right there is what's unsettling to me.
Yeah, because I mean, here's the thing that I think that we should all be mindful of. And my producer and I, we were talking about this earlier today. That's a very slippery slope to have that much power over how people engage and interact with one another. Very slippery slope. And look, I know there are some people that believe that when it comes to these tech spaces and these tech companies or social media platforms, that, they have the right to do whatever. I don't think that's a good idea. I think that there needs to be some level of regulation from the government, especially now that we know that social media platforms have the power and the influence and the people's attention to be able to shape the context, the narrative, the thoughts of constituents about various issues. We already know that. There's been a whole conversation about Facebook and the Trump campaign and Russia using that platform for its disinformation campaign. So we already know all of these things, right? So I think we're now at a place where the government needs to step in and say, look, we need to regulate this. Because people are becoming affected by what they read and what they're consuming from these social media platforms. Regulation. And if we don't regulate this, I mean, back in the day, and I can see if we can find some numbers on it, but I bet you more people get their view of the world from social media today than they probably did 20 years ago or 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's evident.
I know that that's the case for the next generation, for younger people, right? But even folks in their 30s and 40s and 50s, we go to social media first before we would go to your traditional news outlets. We have lost trust in the traditional news outlets, and we have put our trust in hearsay, in platforms that are rooted in people's opinion.
Agree.
And I get it. I understand that sometimes news can make mistakes in presenting information, right? I mean, we're all human at the end of the day. But I still, like, when I read the newspaper, when we research the topics and everything, I still go to your traditional news sources, for whether it's newspaper or television or radio. I still go to those sources because there is a level of trust. There is more of a criterion. There is a guideline. There is a code that journalists have to adhere to when they're presenting news and information. On social media, there's no code. It's the loudest voice wins.
Wikipedia facts, and we have become
Wikipedia fact. Look, when I found out that Wikipedia, Rashad, can be edited by anybody, right? I was like, oh my God. like you can't learn the truth of a situation if everybody has a hand in it, because everybody doesn't have a reverence for the truth the same way you might, or we might have a reverence for the truth, right?
Correct.
And everybody can present a lie in a very creative way to make it sound like the truth.
Yeah.
So, I just think that this is a slippery slope. I would push back. I'm gonna tell you. I mean, look, I get that Elon Musk is a genius. He's an innovator and all of that. But I would push back, and I would even push Twitter to be like, look, you need to maybe talk to the White House. You need to talk to Congress about how we can start to regulate information. And I'm not saying this in a crazy, crazy way, folks, because I know people say, oh man, what about countries that have where the government regulations? I'm not saying it like, you have state-sponsored television and all of those things. That's a little bit far, but we need to strike a balance between people's opinion and what people deem to be useful and newsworthy versus what the actual facts are.
Yeah.
And people go to Twitter to find their news. And it opens the door. Okay, if Elon Musk says free speech, does that include the likes of a Donald Trump? I mean, we got to ask questions. And I know people are like, oh, if he wants to buy it, he wants to buy it. But bro, you should not be able to buy news. I mean, you know what I mean? If you do buy news, you got to tell the public, hey, this is where our news is from. Here on the Black Star Network, we know that our news is about Black people, issues that affect Black people, keeping in mind Black people. You know what I'm saying? So if you come and watch us and you consume what we have to say, then guess what you're going to get? You're going to get a view that puts Black people interests, Black people desires, Black people's concerns at the forefront of the conversation. You're going to get that. That's where the unapologetic, unfiltered part of what we do, that's where that comes in.
Yeah.
Go ahead, brother.
It's like you watching this here and how he's laying things out, from being the largest profit share owner to now reckoning on his own decision to say, hey, I may want to just particularly just buy the entire company, what brings into question something around, narcissism, right? And the point of when do he has to check his own humility and come to an understanding that you don't have to be the savior of this whole world. Right, because you are the wealthiest person on this planet per se. You don't have to be the savior by using your finances to take ownership of everything that the larger population is using. He now has monopolized on cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, which is probably now our newest venture into money and economy in itself, to now space exploration, to Tesla being the most profitable and the most sold cars in the most recent years, to now trying to take ownership of the most informative type of social and public platform that we have. It's now we look at this and you try to understand conglomerates. He has now conglomerized the three most important facets of our lives, which is certainly my level of discomfort. And I believe instead of going to privatizing, because he has the money that can do so, how do we take his influence and then and bring up a conversation where we can possibly, like you mentioned, decentralize Twitter and bring in regulations, because if you decentralize it, that gives a fair share for you and I, more so to actually go into shares and buy profits ourselves from this at a lower cost than what it currently is. And his share price, what is it, raving over about $36.1 billion. Me and you, without our paychecks or whatever we get, we can't purchase a share to that, and it would be little to crumb.
The shares are about $54 and some change per share.
And look how he's taking that whole approach of it to be the largest share. Like, geez, every week
he's the largest. He's a majority shareholder.
Man, I'm like,
and I agree with you. I agree with you. But I think that there needs to be some other very, very real and serious conversations that need to happen between the private sector and the public sector, and between the people and these social media platforms. Like, they're feeding us, and we have very little input on how they're feeding us. Let me just share this very quickly. There was a newly published Pew Research Center survey that was done, a report that was done, and it showed 55. Check this out, folks. 55% of U.S. adults now get their news from social media, either often or sometimes. That's an 8% increase from last year. About 3 in 10, or 28%, said they get their news often, which is up from 20% in 2018. So people are looking to social media as their go-to source for news and information, and more importantly, how they should see the world, how they should see themselves, how they should see the people in their community, right? So we're going to these places, and that's why I'm saying, like, there has to be, we're living in a time right now, folks, where local news is not the strength, is not the source. You go to your major cities and small towns, where, remember back in the day where local news, like newspapers and stuff, that used to be the source. You can pull up Fox Baltimore, and it will be the same style website as Fox Boston or Fox Los Angeles. It's very like cookie cutter across the board. Whereas back in the day, we got news that catered to some of the content caters to us, but the look, the presentation, everything is, you go from one city to another city, urban or rural, and guess what? You're going to get the same, pretty much the same thing that you will go. I love, when I travel, Rashad, I love actually watching the news in other places. I think this is just to get a sense of, what's going on in the neighborhood. They report that joint the same way. I'm like, damn, I get this in Baltimore. Go to New York.
Change the anchor in the journalist.
Change the anchor, bro. That's it. They might have one or two local stories, but they literally talking about the same stuff. Right. Go to Los Angeles, I'll be like, oh, I'm on the other side of the country, man. It's got to be different. No. The people almost look the damn same as well. You know what I mean? You just be like, wow, okay. But news has become so corporatized. Learning information has become such a corporate selling point, such a major business in this country that it's hard. It's hard. And so when you look at how these national platforms are where they sit and how we use them, we say we using social media. Social media is also using us.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Because one of the big driving points of social media is to keep us engaged.
Right. So it calls into question if we know social media was created for that particular purpose of keeping us engaged, keeping us attracted to algorithms, keeping us in a space of where it's going to attract us to buying power, what they want to consider us and to be interested in buying and purchasing products and also retaining information. If this one particular man has larger ownership or full ownership of it, we will more than likely be only shared information that is to his liking, that is to the companies that he's already had investments in, and will be corralled into actually fattening his pockets even more. We will see this man become even more wealthier. And it's at a point, like you said, when does elected officials, our federal government step in and say enough is enough before we give some one person too much power that we don't have control over because he used his influence to take control of the same things that we take in unconsciously and consciously every day. If 55% of the adult population in this country is receiving information that is privatized by the most wealthiest person, he is going to make certain that the information that he is sharing is not going to be counteractive to nothing that he already wants to see us invest in or be knowledgeable of.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just share with you very quickly, Rashad, what people have been saying, because this is, I think, this conversation is touching a chord. Let me make sure I'm saying this. Lumbo, the GOAT. I don't trust my brother. I hate it. Let me say, look, here we got one. I just saw something here. Sports actuary, my guy, he says, Faraji Muhammad, I have a potential solution. No, he was talking about not that comment. He was making a point that we're at a point with our social media. Let me make sure I'm saying it. He said, Faraji, I'm sorry, I can't go along with that. We are all too selfish to regulate speech fairly. In sports, I would say, then you shouldn't be, and I agree with you to a point, but that's why you have certain people who have a reverence for the information, for making sure we get the truth out there, who have a reverence for this ideal of free speech to determine how things go. Look, we put our trust in these corporations and journalists because a respect and reverence for the truth and telling us and reporting to us the truth. We trust the editors of newspapers. We trust the directors of news programs. So shouldn't that same level of trust and shouldn't that same criterion be used for social media platforms? Isn't it funny that social media was not built when we're talking about Twitter and Facebook and all of that? It was not initially designed to share news and information. It was a space for us to come together and for us to engage with one another, right? That's what Facebook was, to keep, get us connected to friends. But now it has evolved. It has transformed into a different thing. So, I mean, it would go ahead, Rashad.
And it calls into question where you were just landing at, bro. Like, it wasn't initially created for that, but we as a people with our hearts and minds, we wanted to share credible information that was close in proximity to our own lived experiences. So you start to see people share data, share stories, share narratives, and share truths to power to what they're seeing versus what you will see on your local or nationalized television to say, hey, you're hearing this story, but this is what's happening in my community. This is what's happening to my people. And we saw these platforms, social media platforms, adapt and create additional arms to this machine that now they have taken over where we often receive our credible information. So although the brother may not be fully comfortable with saying that we as people are too self-centered and selfish to regulate, but what happens when there is no regulation and there's only one privatized person that can regulate it on their own determinants of what they want? That gives the power to one versus all.
Yeah. Mike V said money is considered speech. That was decided years ago. Mike, I could not agree with you more. That is I think that's part of how we got into this space. Janelle said, Faraji, just imagine how many people around the world get their info from social media. 55%, probably more if we look at globally. Donita said, Janelle said, so many venture capitalists have swooped in and bought up local news to sell it off for parts. Fake news syndicated by 2 to 3 media corporations. Yeah. Look, let me tell you, I've studied news. This is not just a profession. Like, I actually kind of try to keep up with the trends of how things are going. If you have 4 or 5 companies that are they are buying news stations, they are buying these stations with an agenda in mind, folks.
So what can
Val
we
said, big
imagine?
news media is more commentary. The news base research from reputable resources is necessary no matter the platform. Elon Musk may be exhibiting Trumpism by thinking that he's the only one. Shaking my head. Ain't that the truth? Malcolm X is quoted. Donita said, look, the media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make innocent guilty and make the guilty innocent. And that's power because they control the minds of the masses. Donita's quoting Malcolm X. Yeah. Melvin checked in and said, Melvin Wright said, this could potentially be censorship at its finest or free speech at its finest. Time will tell.
Great point.
Melvin.
Who wants to see which side of the pendulum comes for?
You know what I'm saying? Like you and that's it could be I think you said it in a nutshell, brother. It could be censorship or it could be at its finest or free speech. But you know what it comes down to, Rashad, as we close this out? The mind or the thinking of the person that's swinging the pendulum.
Mm-hmm. And
what's the thinking of Elon Musk? Where's his mind at? He's saying that the people need to be free, quote unquote, have a place to have free speech. But you know that certain speech can be used. It may not be hurt. It may be offensive, but it still can be deemed free speech. Mm-hmm. So if, again, going back to my Donald Trump point, would you let Donald Trump back on Twitter if you are given the opportunity? Yeah. And then Janelle always watches and always asking questions. He said, Faraji, isn't it suspicious that Elon Musk is pushing for Twitter just as Trump's Truth social media company fizzled? Lord, I smell a grift coming by way of Elon Musk. Janelle, timing is everything.
Let me say, Kawinky Dink.
That's bing bong. Janelle, you know, it might be Trump might be saved from Elon as a result of Elon Musk. If Trump gets back on social media, that's the thing. All right, look, we got to take a quick pause. Rashad, I know you got to hop off, so I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much for your time and giving us your insight today, man. We truly appreciate it.
Appreciate it, brother. And leaving off with that, everybody has a Twitter handle. Maybe we should handle Twitter with care at this point. Make sure we keep a handle on what we have to keep our voices and things powerful. But thank you, brother. Always.
Absolutely. Thank you, big brother. Thank you for being so good for the culture. My man Rashad checking in every Thursday here on The Culture. All right, folks, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, let's talk a little bit about toxic polarization. We're going to be checking in with Mr. Pierce Godwin, who serves as the founder and CEO of the Listen First Project, of how we can dismantle toxic polarization, especially in our political spaces. We'll have that conversation up next, right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, welcome back to the second hour of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. I am super excited about this next conversation that we're planning to have. You might remember that a couple of weeks ago, we had a discussion about the level of toxicity that has been in our politics. And I had mentioned that there needs to be a model or a different framework on how we have these important conversations without wanting to bust anybody in the mouth or without feeling offended or anything like that. So after looking, having that conversation, I came across, an op-ed that was written by Mr. Pierce Godwin, who is the founder and CEO of what he's called the Listen Project. And he wrote a piece called America Talks, Toxic Polarization Threatens Our Nation's Future. Here's how we can save it. And as part of that op-ed, he talks about the value of having conversations rooted in both truth and reconciliation. So I found it to be fascinating, his ideas to be fascinating, that we can have, if we had a national platform that can bring people together that normally wouldn't be in the same space with one another, to have these very, very hard, sensitive conversations, that maybe this could be a sign and a model of progress. So I invited Mr. Godwin to join us today. And do we have Mr. Pierce Godwin with us this afternoon? Yes.
Yes, sir. It's an honor.
Pierce, how are you, sir?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I was fascinated, Pierce, by what you said in USA Today. I just want to share with people just a little bit about what you guys are planning to do as for the national, what y'all call it, the National Week of Conversation, which is, I think is, it's big, absolutely big. That's going to be happening in June. But you said something at the very beginning of your op-ed. You said Abraham Lincoln, quoting Jesus, said, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." They weren't playing. More than half of us, 54%, now say our fellow Americans pose the biggest threat to the country. Whoa.
Yes, sir.
Whoa. Now, Pierce, let me just say this, brother. We talked about the Brooklyn subway shooter, the alleged suspect, Mr. Frank James. And my very point was, if Mr. James, who again alleged suspect, if he was so upset with how things are going in this country, why would he turn his gun on the people that are struggling with him? I mean, these are New Yorkers that are in the same boat that you're in.
Yes.
But then when I saw that, I said, wow. So we're at a point where we're not even able to make the discernment between who is responsible for our polarization, who's responsible for our suffering, that we are just so enraged and confused that we're turning the gun on our own selves, not understanding that the people we're turning the gun on, the people that we're yelling and screaming at, are the ones that are going through the same turmoil.
I think that's so well said, Faraji. And we are just seeing enemies all around us. And the problem is those enemies we're seeing are not a common enemy. It's not an external threat. It's not even a virus, which we might have hoped would have united us, but it is each other. And indeed, I think Abraham and Lincoln and Jesus were onto something. There's no way that this great experiment, as we like to think of these United States, can survive if we're going to rip it to shreds from within, if we're going to dehumanize and demean our fellow Americans. One of the awesome things about America is the variety of backgrounds and beliefs that are represented in this place. But as soon as we have lost all trust and all appreciation for the dignity in our fellow citizens here, we're on a very dangerous path. Certainly, we've already seen some violence, and you mentioned the tragedy in Brooklyn, but whether it's smaller scale or larger scale, as we've seen in recent years, it doesn't lead anywhere good. And indeed, the folks who look at this and have seen conflict around the world are sounding the alarm and are warning us that, listen, we've really lost the grip on ourselves when more than 1 in 5 Americans of various persuasions think we'd be better off if some of those folks on the other side just died. To your point, Faraji, what the hell? This is no way for us to live together. And indeed, we won't be able to live together on this current trajectory.
So you're, I mean, I would agree with you that we can't coexist with one another, right? Because we can't stand to look at each other. Yeah. and in some ways, we are being told that your neighbor is the enemy. And I find that to be so problematic because it seems like every 2 years or every 4 years, when the elections come around, Pierce, the narrative is, let's stand together as one country.
Mm-hmm.
But then in between those elections, the narrative becomes, this person is to blame, that person is to blame. Now, right. how do we have conversations in this country where we're not glossing over what, past history, we're not ingesting lies into a situation, but how do we have conversations that really are rooted in truth, that are really rooted in making sure that the grievances that people have or the injustices that people feel are fully addressed and are considered when having big conversations about anything from politics to education to healthcare? How do we have those discussions?
Yes, sir. And those are obviously the hard, deep, real, raw conversations we have to have. What I found is that each one of those has to start with the very basic, feels too basic, but it's a commentary on where we are, just seeing that humanity across differences. So you and I are going to be able to align on a common conception of truth, on a common understanding of injustice until I care about you at least a little bit. At least I see you as a fellow human being, a fellow American, somebody whose interest I want to care about and give some weight to. We have 3 norms that we set out for these annual National Weeks of Conversations and for all of the events that the Listen First Coalition, which is over 400 organizations in their own way, bringing folks together across differences. Norm number 1 is listen with curiosity. Once I'm curious about what you're saying, Faraji, now we can talk about your story. We can talk about the pain, the injustices that we all bring in our lives. We can talk about the issues that must be resolved for us to have a prosperous existence here together. Listen with curiosity. Connect with respect. In that conversation, we've got to be giving each other some modicum of grace and not shouting each other down, not shaming each other, but being willing to hear where the person is coming from. And in that speaking, speak from our own experience. So we're not going to get too far if I'm just mouthing off on my favorite talking head from the television or person on social media. But if I'm telling you my story, I'm talking about my experience and you're talking about yours. And I'm listening with curiosity, listening with a desire and an imparting of dignity on you, then we're going to be able to have that common ground and humanity just between ourselves that will allow us to really go there, to go to the places we have to go to correct so many injustices and so many ways in which this American promise has fallen short. But I'm afraid right now, if we're screaming at each other, it's landing on deaf ears and we're only digging in farther and farther. So it's got to start with that humanity, seeing each other, being together. And if we have enough folks doing that, then we'll be able to truly address together some of those greatest tragedies and sins of our past history together.
So and I'm glad that you mentioned this, Pierce, because you said that there is a Listen First coalition
yes, sir.
of hundreds of organizations. So how does that, give us some insight as to how structurally, how is that laid out? Because if you got all these organizations and then you have like this national, I would say a national guideline for constructive dialogue, which I think is absolutely important, to say the least. And that I think that then how is that played out? Like what is the model in detail?
Yeah, absolutely. Practicing what I preach here and speaking from my own experience, I'll give you just a bit of how I got, committed to this mission. In 2013, I had a rather extreme example of what we're encouraging of all of our fellow Americans to step outside of our comfort zone, to engage and expose ourselves to people and experiences unlike ourselves. For me, that was 6 months over in Uganda with an international relief organization. And I was so struck by the incredible relational wealth in a place that is not known for material wealth. And then looked back over here at the most prosperous, materially speaking nation in the world and thought, what in the world are we doing? So I jotted down some thoughts and founded Listen First Project. But the key was realizing that I wasn't alone, that there were so many other organizations, even there in 2016, 2017, who wanted in their own way to move beyond division and contempt to connection and understanding. So I said, well, gosh, imagine if we could have a greater impact together. So with 4 organizations, we started the Listen First Coalition. Now, as I mentioned, it's over 400. But the first idea to do something together, not just have a bunch of nice logos on a webpage, was what has become the National Week of Conversation. So can we have at least 1 week a year where we are all being a little bit more intentional about engaging with folks across differences, about turning off perhaps some of our favorite narratives that are coming into our lives and into our social media feeds and televisions every day, and hear experiences from somebody different, better understand where they're coming from, their pain, their hopes, their fears, their struggles, and their injustices. If we could do that at least 1 week a year, we would make some progress, and thereby showcasing the many different varieties, to your point, of ways in which folks are coming together across differences. So the structure, beginning last year in partnership with USA Today and Walmart and others, is that this National Week, which is a kind of decentralized feature and showcase of many different events from many different organizations, we kick it off with one single event called America Talks. And that event is where we've invoked those 3 norms I mentioned: listen with curiosity, speak from your own experience, connect with respect. And other organizations you'll find in other events may have others. Some have 10, some have 6. But we found collectively as a field that those 3 distill it quite nicely. So what we have coming up here at the end of the month here in just really a week and a half, on April 21st or 23rd, if you prefer a Saturday, is that America Talks event. At americatalks.us, you can find the opportunity to come, and if you prefer a one-on-one conversation, online video, great. If you'd rather be in a small group of 5 folks, great. But we're going to mix those groups up and those one-on-one conversations so you are having that rich, refreshing, and hopeful experience of engaging with somebody, with a fellow American who may live a life from a place that you're not as familiar with. And we know that in each one of those conversations, we'll be taking one more step forward in that ability to achieve the social cohesion that addressing issues and that moving forward together productively requires. So America Talks, April 21st and 23rd, and then that whole next week, April 24th through 30th this year, will be the National Week of Conversation with a wide variety of awesome, well-tried and true opportunities for folks to engage with their fellow Americans, to see that humanity, to turn down the heat, and begin to find a way forward together.
I'm on the website, and it's americatalks.us. Is that correct, Pierce?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
When we're talking about this level of dysfunction, where we can't talk to one another. I mean, you had an experience across the waters where you saw, and I love how you said it, and that level of relational wealth, which I think is absolutely important. But we're at a place in this country where I'm concerned, Pierce, that even with a model like this, a structure like this, that people are so jaded, which is justified, right? Are so jaded by just the idea of sitting down, sharing stories, listening, and understanding where other people are, where they're coming from, the walk in their shoes. And I know that some people are listening today and they're like, I mean, that sounds well and good, but
yes,
how do we get past that level of pain and that hurt? Because I truly believe I truly believe, especially for Black people in this country, and I think that, you know, just to say it like that, because race plays such an important factor in this process, right? Like, I don't have a problem talking and listening and understanding, but if it's not based upon you really taking the time to learn my story, right? You willing to remove any type of implicit bias that you may have. Like, if you're not being genuine in your attempts to understand me, and if I'm not being genuine in my attempts to understand you, no structure is going to generate that within a human being. Like, that's what we have to bring to the table. We have to bring a genuine concern for other people to the table in order to make this thing work.
You're exactly right, and I hear you, and so deeply understand that exhaustion and that jaded spirit that so many of us, and especially in the Black community, have in light of the injustices, in light of the atrocities that have taken place over the history of this country. You know, I know some of us fall back on our faith and the command to love our neighbor, and to be quick to listen. And I think a lot of that idea of extending grace and loving our neighbor can inform and can embolden and give us a little bit of that courage to get off the mat and say, all right, I'm gonna give it a try. But also, honestly, Faraji, I think it comes down to a practical matter. I don't know another way. I don't know another way to find a better tomorrow for all of the communities, especially the communities in this nation who have been marginalized, who have been mistreated horrifically over our history. I don't know another way to move forward together productively, to rise together, to overcome and move beyond those injustices without coming to the proverbial table together. We can remain in our camps. We can remain as a white guy, ignorant to people unlike myself, taking only what I know of what I might see in the news or what limited little data points I might piece together to create an inaccurate and incomplete picture of another community here in the country. But as exhausting as it can be, as unfair as it can be for one side to continually be asked to tell their story, I just don't know another way, because nothing has ever moved me the way I can be moved by hearing your story. And as you said, we've got to come in with that goodwill, with that open heart. And I firmly believe that there are more than enough people still, as much as the loud voices are throwing bombs at one another. I think there are enough people of goodwill who want the best for their fellow American, who want the best for their neighbor, for us to turn the tide together. But it does take courage. It takes some humility, and it's not easy.
I agree with you, Pierce. I think that a lot of people want to, you know, and I'm thinking of from Black people to white people to Latino people in this country. I think people genuinely just like and you, I'm sure you've probably seen all the recent data. People are just tired of the level of animosity, the level of disparity and polarization. I think that people really do want to try to move forward, right? And it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. And I tell people this all the time. I tell people, I say, look, we're at a point in our lives and in this country's history where if we need to make a decision to change the trajectory and the path that this country is going down, that is rooted in our power. That's people power.
That's right.
We can't wait on, I mean, we can't wait on government leadership or even cultural leadership to be the source of this revolution. Because I truly believe this is a revolution we're talking about here, Pierce. That just the simple act, the simple but yet profound and powerful act of listening, understanding, sharing. These are revolutionary tactics, and people don't. And people say, "Well, how is it revolutionary?" Because it's so counter to what the culture currently is.
That's right. That's right. I couldn't say it better. We have to take our power back. We have to fight back against social media, politicians, all of these forces that are actively dividing us. We have to drown all that out with the courage and the humility to come to the table, to suspend judgment and extend grace, to listen, to understand with curiosity. It is up to us. There is no other way. All the other incentives for politicians, the market incentives, which I look in the mirror on this, what are we asking for from our media? What are we asking for from social media? We have got to fight back. We have got to take the ownership of our shared future. And unless we do so, you're absolutely right. Nobody else is going to do it. It's up to us. I think we have a fundamental choice to make here. Are we going to continue to fight against our fellow Americans, or are we going to fight for America? Are we going to fight for a stronger future for every community in this country? We are or we aren't. If we don't step up, if we don't take these revolutionary steps of listening, of opening our hearts and opening our minds to people unlike ourselves, then the future is something that neither you nor I, want to imagine. But we've seen hints of it. And to your point, it's not just kind of this abstract national fear anymore. It's hitting close to home for so many of us. This animosity across differences is breaking down vacations, tearing apart workplaces, places of worship are severing over this. It's hitting close to home. Everybody feels it, the personal pain, the national fear, and we're only going to overcome it by looking ourselves in the mirror and taking these steps to come together, to spend some time together, and then once that heat is turned down by the human connection, find a way forward together.
Pierce, I'm enjoying it, and there are a number of people that have been checking in on our chat that are seeing. Some folks are saying, look, this idea of listening first works. One of our watchers said that she used it while she was in the prison system in terms of working with the inmates in that system, and it works. The other folks are still expressing some resistance to this idea, which I think you understand why.
Absolutely.
But I wanted to put it out there that there is a platform that we should really consider. When we're talking about having these smaller conversations and these big conversations. As a community organizer, I've learned that you can't go into anybody's community telling them what to do. You got to listen to what they need and what their interests are.
Yes.
And so, I feel like we're in the same place on a collective national scale that we have, if people understood, for example, of us as citizens and constituents, if we really understood that we have the power.
That's right.
We have the power to change the direction this country is going into. Like yes. Like at this point, when government becomes, and this is hard to say, Pierce, I gotta say this, but when government becomes your enemy in some way, shape, or form, then what should the people do? The active constituent, the engaged citizen, need to take actions into their own hands, not by guns and raising up weapons.
Right.
But we need to do things that are so counter to what we are used to that it does create a what I would hear from Dr. King to Reverend William Barber. There needs to be a moral revolution. There needs to be a listening revolution that needs to occur in this country. I mean, I'm not quite sure. And we have these conversations a lot on the show, and I'm always like, something has to really change, Pierce. Something really has to change, man.
It does. And we've emphasized, of course, that listening revolution and listening with curiosity. But I also want to point out that this is a critical opportunity for any American from any background or belief who feels like their voice hasn't been heard. Their voice has been marginalized, silenced, disregarded. Their voice has been canceled, shamed, whatever it is, to be heard, to come to a place in which the price of entry into these conversations that America Talks is that everybody's going to listen. That means everybody gets to speak and gets to share their story. And we're not beating around the bush either. We're being real with each other. And that's what we have to do. So I also want to make sure that your listeners know how important it is that their voices are at the table and that they are heard. So please, by all means, be a part of these conversations. Give your fellow Americans the gift of hearing and learning from you, of elevating your issues, of getting perhaps some unlikely allies in the fight for whatever issue, whatever justice, whatever reform it is that you see as advantageous to the country. This is a pretty awesome opportunity, even from a selfish perspective, to get some unlikely allies and to suddenly have a greater force pursuing the social justice or any other issue that may be of interest to any of us. So I think we don't get too far unless we're also willing to listen with that curiosity. But what an opportunity to be heard in a way that many communities have never been heard before.
Pierce, how can people get more information? What's the website for America Talks and National Week of Conversation?
Yes, sir. It's americatalks.us, and you'll see right there a couple options for your schedule and your preferred format, whether you like one-on-one or small group, americatalks.us, and then you'll see subsequent conversations over that last week of the month here in the National Week of Conversation. But I want to thank your viewers and listeners for considering the opportunity to bring their voices to the table, because as you said, without beginning this revolution ourselves in our daily lives, with our friends, with our families, and in this case, with people that might not be right around us, we don't have much of a hope. We are the hope, and everybody leaves these conversations feeling hopeful in a way that we haven't before in the midst of this food fight that is tearing us all down. So I hope to see you and everybody else there. Thank you so much for letting me spend a little time with you.
Absolutely. Pierce Godwin, founder and CEO of the Listen First Project and their upcoming events of America Talks and National Week of Conversation. Pierce, thank you, sir, for spending your time with us for a few minutes to share with us your ideas and giving us the details about this effort. We appreciate it.
Thanks for being such an inspiring partner on this mission. Excited to continue working together.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, let's talk about what's going on in Texas and how they are trying to handle the teacher shortage in Texas by proposing a 4-day work week. Question is that going to be beneficial for the students and for the teachers themselves? We'll be checking in with Nakia Gladden, who is an educator, to give us her insight about this situation. So stay with us. That conversation is coming up next, right here on The Culture, only on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
It's time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Like, wow, Roland was amazing on that.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared. You dig?
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.
Folks, there is a small revolution that is happening in Texas and the education world, and it's starting with how teachers are using their time as a result of the shortage that the country is currently experiencing as due to COVID-19. There are a number of teachers that are saying, you know what, I'm not coming back into the classroom, all because of everything from mask mandates to conflicting guidelines on how schools should handle being teaching students in the midst of a pandemic. Teachers have decided not to come back. And so Texas, that great Lone Star state of Texas, is moving forward to come up with some way to deal with this crisis of teacher shortage. So what they have proposed is what they say is a 4-day week for Texas. Now, this is being considered for the Jasper Independent School District located in Eastern Texas. It was confirmed last month that they will switch to the 4-day model during the 2022 through 2023 school year. The district shared on their Facebook page that the calendar will satisfy the 75,600 minutes required for students during a school year in Texas. And let me just share with you what the superintendent of the Jasper Independent School District had to say. This is coming from Mr. John Saybold. He said, quote, "Teacher burnout has been an issue for a long time, but since COVID, it has seemed to expand and it's becoming more and more of an issue. The 4-day week kind of makes it a little more manageable for them because there's so much pressure placed on our teachers. As a school district, ultimately, the best thing we can do for kids is put the best possible teacher in front of them every day." Here to talk to us a little bit about the struggles and the plight of the teacher is Nakia Gladden, who is an educator. She is an advocate of making sure that teachers are heard and that their work is being felt. Nakia, thank you so much for joining us. How are you this afternoon?
I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. How are you?
Fantastic.
Great, great. Nakia, when you think about what's happening in Texas, you're teaching in the state here in the state of Maryland.
Yes.
But this idea of a 4-day work week for teachers to try to satisfy or to try to address this teacher shortage, does this make sense to you?
It's actually a conundrum, because the fact of the matter is there is a burnout, and that's facts. I mean, for the most part, at this point, even though teachers are being paid the salary that they're being paid, because there is a shortage, for the most part, what you want to do when you are working is to make it so that when you go home, you don't have to work after that, and then you can have a work-life balance.
Mhm.
However, unfortunately, because there's a shortage, now we have what they call coverage. They just started paying us for coverage, but you don't have that time to plan for the next day or your next curriculum. So then you have to take those things home. So it's just been a burnout. The only other problem with that is, and when I say a conundrum, is you don't want the kids to be disconnected by what it is that you're trying to teach them, because they have the attention span of children. So if they're not learning, something on a consistent basis, for the most part, they're probably not going to remember or retain or internalize the information that you gave them that next week. So, I mean, I'm really kind of on the fence with this one. I mean, obviously, as a teacher, it's like, yes, I would love a 3-day weekend. I'm on my spring break now, and it's been great, but
it's been great. It doesn't feel long enough, though.
No, not at all. I'm struggling and still working. Like right now, just doing my curriculums for the rest of the year. And it's definitely difficult, but I understand exactly where they're coming from. And there's a bottom line in terms of what's going on with COVID. You have to understand, I teach, for your audience, I teach middle school. My children have come in, I'm sixth grade. They came in from pretty much fourth grade, because COVID, they were doing, virtual learning. And me as a parent, my child, she was virtually learning, quote unquote, and I'm doing air quotes, but you can't see it. She was doing virtually learning, but she was playing games and doing all that stuff. So for the most part, most teachers are trying to teach on a curriculum that's already been set for where I am, which is BCPS, has already been set, but on a fourth grade mindset. And now we're trying to get them into a sixth grade mindset. And they haven't even been in the social structure of what, sixth grade was. They didn't have lockers that had, combination locks. So we had to spend a significant amount of time just doing that. So we haven't even gotten into the curriculum for a long time. So it's definitely, I understand that COVID definitely just messed up a whole lot of stuff.
So one of the big things that we talked about, Nakia, was like there is this whole thing around pandemic learning. We had a conversation just a few days ago saying that in particular third graders came back to school and came back to the classroom missing those life skills, from everything from tying their shoes to fine motor skills. Have you been experiencing that?
Oh, absolutely.
And how have you been? How have you been addressing that?
And it's been really difficult. Again, I'm not necessarily in the elementary level, although I have a daughter that's 10. Luckily, she has a mother that's a teacher anyway, so I was able to continue that. But there was a lot of parents that didn't necessarily do all those things. And so what we're learning now is we're more so, because teachers at this point, we're not just teachers, we're counselors. We have to make sure that they're not fighting each other. We have to go through things in terms of them fighting each other, and literally social media, those things. Like, that has been such a hard thing to deal with. And I've watched teachers that have been in the game for 20 years that literally walked out and said, I can't do it. I'm not doing it. Yeah. I have right now about 4 people that are about to leave now. It is a shortage and it's putting a lot of like pressure, but then there's a disconnect in terms of the administration versus the teachers, because at the end of the day, the teachers are the ones who are the weight is on their shoulders and it's hard.
I can only imagine it being so hard, and I'm wondering, you know, if this small school district in Texas is able to look at this, is this something that could possibly be duplicated in other districts, in larger districts, whether you're talking about, you know, in Maryland, whether you're talking about New York City or talking about California, you know, is this an idea that can be duplicated across the board? What do you think? You think that 4-day work weeks for teachers in some of these more populous populous cities and towns would
the
work?
way that I think about it actually is, to be honest with you, I don't think that anyone should have to do a 5-day schedule. That's just
you say you don't think anyone should have to do it?
No.
Wow. Okay.
No, because the fact of the matter is look, we work from Monday to Friday, and then we have Saturday, and then we have Sunday, which we're planning for the next week. So when do we have time for ourselves? We're teaching our children very early that you are just like mandated on time, and which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it really does cause a lot of stress and anxiety. So if you have someone, particularly me, who works in the teaching realm, that is kind of scary because, okay, so when do I spend time with my family if I'm planning lessons all the time and I'm trying to make sure that I'm taking care of other people's kids while I have my own? So when can I take care of mine?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
At the same time, again, and this is where the conundrum is you do need to make sure that parents are supplementing their kids' education so that you don't feel like if I'm telling you, you know, this is what we're learning through the week, we could do this in 4 days. That's a possibility. But if no one is reiterating what it is that was taught, by the time I see them on that next Monday, then most of our lesson plan is going to be me re-saying exactly what it was that I taught last week, because now they went through the weekend, they had fun, they had cake, they went to birthday parties, they did all that, and they have no idea what it is that I said. So I have to spend most of that time not teaching, but more so just reminding what it is that I taught.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to share some of the comments that we've gotten, Nakia, from as we're having this discussion, because people have been checking in.
Okay.
Chachi says, I'm a Montessori educator in Texas, among other things. Firstly, Jasper is a very small country town in Texas where everybody knows your name. Nowhere else is hearing the 4-day work week. So, you know, to her, she's not seeing that this thing may be duplicated. It could be, but she's saying it's a small town.
Yeah,
it's a small town, and I'm wondering, you know, by it being a small town, they can be a little bit more innovative about how they handle it. But when you're dealing with, like, in the city of Baltimore, that has about 80,000 students, and you have a teacher shortage, you got to really figure out the best ways to handle a situation like that.
Absolutely. So, I mean, my background, I used to lobby for K through 12 when I was working on Capitol Hill. Once I became a teacher, because I was so, like, you know, loved the idea of education. But when you get into it, you see that there is a huge difference and a disconnect between people who are making policy for education and people who are actually in it. So I can see why she would have she or he, I'm sorry, but why they would have that understanding. It is a hard thing because no, I don't know if a 4-day week would be a good idea, but I can see why for teacher burnout, because you want the best teachers. I've seen so many great teachers being pushed out because they are burnt out. And that's a problem because I fear for that for my own child to say, I only want the best teachers teaching her.
Yeah, I mean that's the and if you experience burnout, the likelihood of you coming back into the profession or coming back to school is going to be very slim. The other part about it is, we know, Nakia, that some schools don't have the capacity to address that level of pain, for students. I mean, for teachers, unless you have somebody on hand like a counselor or somebody like a psychologist. I mean, there would have to be individuals ready to address that right there. And I know some schools don't have that.
I'm sorry. Yeah, there's not that available, unfortunately. And again, the fact of the matter is that we are so inundated with all of this stuff. And understand this, teachers not only went through COVID as well. I know that we talked about, nurses, first responders, all those things. Teachers also still had to step up their game during COVID. And yet, for some odd reason, we have not gotten the same, I guess, not necessarily praise, because that's not what I want. And, that's not what I work for, because you know me. But, the same credentials and saying we stepped up. And yet, it took a minute for us to even get, our coverage pay, all those things. It's been extremely, extremely hard, to the point where luckily some people who've been working for 20 years could leave with their pension, and that's fine. And they literally walked out in the middle of class, in the middle of the school. They was like, I'm done. So we've definitely experienced a whole lot in a very short period of time. And for some odd reason, that's been what we've experienced, and no one is shining light on that. And I thank you for actually shining light on that.
Well, I see the pain. You know what I mean? I know the pain. Of course, my wife is an educator, and there's so much pain. And I think that during the pandemic, in the early parts of this pandemic, teachers got the short end of the stick, man.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. We had to learn how to do Schoology. No one knew what that was.
Right.
And some people, were used to doing paperwork as opposed to doing digital work. You had to learn IT all of a sudden. So it was so many things that they were thrown into, like really, really quickly. And a lot were willing to do it. But you're right. A lot of people are walking out. And it's a hardship on other teachers who are willing to, because they love being educators, and also because they love their kids, they're willing to sacrifice. But when I come home, I'm sleepy.
Right. You're sleepy, and you probably in some way, Nakia, probably question why you got involved in the profession in some way, right? Like, because it's not just about the children that you're dealing with. You're dealing with parents, you're dealing with staff, you're dealing with the policies.
Absolutely.
And all of that is brought into the classroom every day that you come in. All of that is felt. And I think that's not fair. And as much as we want to quote unquote praise teachers, and we want to thank teachers, and we say, oh, teachers, those who are educators, they are critical to society. We treat teachers so bad.
Yes.
And I say we treat teachers so bad, as if they don't take care of our children.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, your child spends more time with their teacher than they will than they do with
than
you.
they do with you. Absolutely.
And it's like, why are we putting the teachers, the needs, the interests on the back of the teachers on the back burner and act like they don't? I mean, of course, let's not talk about pay because, well, we got to talk about pay. I mean, and just
we really got to go there.
I mean, you know, we can always say, oh man, teachers need to make, you know, when it comes to teachers versus athletes, apples and oranges. Okay. Apples and oranges. And the reason I say it's apples and oranges is because it's just that as much as we want to push back on, oh, you know, we support, you know, push back against those who don't stand with teachers. The reality is we love sports and entertainment more. We don't value education and learning. So that's why teachers get, you know, the pay that they get. We just, and as I'm saying, as a society, it's a part of our culture. We don't value education and learning in this country.
So when you say value, I mean, we all know, first of all, I mean, and truth of the matter is legally, you have to have your child in school. Otherwise you might be jailed unless you're doing homeschooling, right? So we value it in that, in terms of who you're paying to actually teach your kids, that we don't value. But the fact,
I mean, like, and I'm sure you probably have the stories.
I'm sorry.
Why do I say that? I worked in a school in a couple of different capacities, and I'm saying that we will continue to send children to schools that aren't teaching our children, right?
Yeah, but
we will not show up at those PTA meetings, those school meetings, right?
Yeah,
we look at teachers like babysitters.
Yeah.
Versus the person that's responsible for cultivating your child to be a decent human being.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, I had one parent since I became a teacher, one parent, and it just so happened, oddly enough, that he and I went to college together. We didn't even know that, and she's in my homeroom class. And that was the only parent that really reached out to me. Everyone else I had to reach out to. I'm like, do you know what your child is doing? Or do you even care who's teaching your child? Do you even want to know who I am? And I gave it, I was a little bit more sympathetic considering the fact that we did just come through COVID. So they weren't able to come into the school, but I would have been on the phone. Like, I know my daughter's teacher by heart. Like, she know me, we know each other's number, we talk to each other. That's also a problem, because what people don't understand is that there has to be a collaboration between parent and teacher. Absolutely. It is not a one person job.
Nope.
It's two.
It's two. It could
two
be
or three, hopefully.
It might
two
be
or three.
four.
2 or 3.
You know what I'm saying? It might be a whole bunch of them, but you are absolutely
or many. My mother calls my
right?
teacher, my daughter's teacher too. I've had a few grandmothers and grandfathers call me. Yeah. Later on, after I harassed them, but
I mean, you got to. We got to be hands-on in the education. So I'm seeing what's happening in Texas, and I'm surprised that Texas, which has traditionally been a state that has been holding on to certain type of values and traditions, but to see them take such a big progressive move of cutting it down to 4 days a week.
Yeah, that is extremely progressive. And shocking, like you said.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised, but I'm happy because
but it's small. It's a small county.
It's a small county, small step, which is why this was why we wanted to talk about it on this show. Because we just want to let people know, like, it is happening. There can be a revolution in teaching in this country.
I would be shocked to see how widespread that actually.
Yeah, I will be too. I would be too.
Would you be okay with that? Because then that would require, real quickly, because I know we're about to be out of time, but really quickly, would that require a lot of jobs? Because then that means that parents would have to figure out what they're going to do on that 5th day, which will be, I don't know, Friday or Monday or whatever. how are the parents going to be able to generate their income? Because we still have a workforce that requires, for the most part, 5 days a week. How do you make that work?
Yeah, that's a big question.
Yeah.
That's a big question. Nakia, I appreciate you. We're going to have you come back and be a part of a number of other conversations, but we wanted to kind of get the ball rolling with you talking about something you're very passionate about, which is education. So we appreciate your time to talk and share about your experience in teaching.
Thank you. Thank you, The Culture. Nice to meet
I
you guys.
appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Nakia Gladden checking in, educator in the state of Maryland, and just giving her thoughts about what's happening in Texas. Folks, we're going to certainly keep our eyes on what's happening. And of course, just making sure that this could be the beginning of something different that we see across the country. I don't know, but we will certainly keep you posted. All right, folks, a dynamic show today. I want to thank all of my wonderful guests for being a part of the conversation. And of course, I want to thank each and every one of you for jumping in, participating in the chat on both our Facebook and YouTube page. Make sure you continue to support us. BlackStarNetwork.com is the website to download for free. Get the app, folks. Download it. Download it on your television. Download it on your tablet and your smartphone. Get the app. Make sure that you can have access to Black-owned media that is unapologetic and unfiltered. And we need your support on Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, and Zelle. If you can't offer a financial donation, then please share the work and the programming and everything that's coming out of Black Star. Share with your family and friends and tell them to definitely download the app because it's all for free and it's all for you. So again, BlackStarNetwork.com is where it's happening at. All right, that will do it for me. Tomorrow is Friday. I want to bring on a relationship specialist, LaDawn Black, to talk to us a little bit about the whole Cam Newton situation. I wanted to talk to a person that can give us some insight about what Cam was talking about when he said that a woman's role needs to be. We will have that conversation tomorrow and, of course, bring you up to date on some of the latest news and information. So that you can expect that tomorrow with my culture crew as well. I thank each and every one of you for being a part of the discussion. Stay tuned. Up next at the 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time hour is Roland Martin Unfiltered. Big Brother Roland will be bringing more of the great news and bringing us the latest, everything from the subway shooting to all the things that are happening across the country. So make sure you tune in for that. But as always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong, stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we will talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Talk to you soon. Peace.